More than 20 years have passed since my cousin Chris died. And I'm still obsessed by his story. I want to understand why Chris, a young Swiss man who grew up in a peaceful country, joined a faraway war and ended up dead.
Actually, the department or the beginning of the film is really my memories that I had from my childhood. When Chris died, I was 10 years old. So I from a perspective of a child, I learned about his death. I was always drawing a lot, and it kind of fits for me. It kind of fits to have these memories of my childhood in animation. When he died, I really had this nightmare over and over again. So for me, it's kind of natural to start the film with that.
One evening, just before bedtime, my parents told me my cousin Chris had died. That night, in my dreams, I began searching for him. I wanted to give him a drawing. I called out for him, but he couldn't hear me.
I'm actually an animation filmmaker, an illustrator, so the images, the drawn images are really my way of expressing myself, even more than the words. Also, I'm part of the family, and animation is a really good tool to express subjective vision of something. I've chosen to do the animation in black and white because I think it fits very well with the abstraction of fainting memory. Through the film, I'm trying to reconstruct an image of my cousin within the memories of other people. So I thought it fits quite well with black and white. When I decided, or when I tried to find a way to express war and the cruelty of war, when you have a fear, for example, when you are afraid of the shadow that is under your bed as a little child, you never know how it really looks like, and it's much more dangerous if you don't see things. So I've decided to leave the bad thing in the film, to leave it as a shadow, as something that takes shapes and loses the shape again. At the same time, I had this image of the grasshoppers that in Africa are kind of flowing over the fields and eating up all the plain. And they kind of destroy everything within a second, like all the basis of life. To do a hybrid is quite challenging, I would say. In our case, we had animation, we had the live action scenes, the documentary scenes, and the archives.
They returned your notebooks with your body, reports from the war, testimonies from the last weeks and days before your death.
I did the shooting quite early in the process, so I had the interviews and we made a transcript out of it. Then I started to do a script with the transcripts, and I invented actually the animation scenes. It's very difficult to find out what really happened. There are a lot of stories, there are a lot of conspiracy theories. And I felt that I needed to put myself into the film to just get the story together and to be able to make it, to tell the story. Otherwise you have only loose ends which don't fit together. Because I'm the cousin of Chris, I felt like I really wanted to pose him some questions, and this is like really, that was my wish, and I decided to include that into the film. So it's kind of a dialogue between me and my cousin. My cousin is represented by his notebooks, so I don't really talk directly to him, but sometimes he responds me through his notebooks.
This leads to a bloody conflict that lasts for years and spreads to neighboring countries. And you, a 26-year-old reporter from Switzerland, head right into the heart of the war zone.
If you take the train to Yugoslavia, you start to sense the war a few kilometers before the border.
I had all the archives, I had some objects that my cousin was having in his luggage when he died. Those little things came back with his corpse. So I had also the ticket, the train ticket, and I knew exactly where he went and which way he went. And I thought it's really absurd somehow that I had a ticket or a receipt of 2 coffees, and I knew that he paid such amount of shillings for this coffee, and at the same time I didn't know what really happened to him. And I decided to just try to go onto spot and try to find out on spot what happened to him. In the beginning, it was for me very important to find out who killed my cousin. It was like the essential question. And then I started to do some research. I started to do the project. And all of a sudden I realized actually that's not what I'm interested in, because it will not change anything. He's dead. And I mean, the interesting thing is more who was behind the murder and why did Chris do what he did. Because actually Chris is kind of a vehicle who is, I mean, he's my starting point. The story of my family is my starting point. But it takes me to much more general questions about what is war and what is violence doing with to human beings. How do we react in certain circumstances? Why are we attracted by violence? I mean, not most of us are kind of attracted by violence and by some dark sides that we have inside of us.
A lo mejor le faltaba el comprender cómo era posible que una guerra fuera tan sucia. Entonces, Christian era una persona que te decía, cuando veía un muerto civil, se preguntaba, ¿están matando civiles? Esto no es una guerra, esto no se puede hacer. Entonces, teníamos la discusión siempre con él de no, esto es una guerra.
I mean, the sad thing about the story is that Chris the Swiss, the topic of the film, is much more actual than it was when I started. I mean, look around Europe, what's happening in whole Europe. It's not only a film about former Yugoslavia, it's a film about what we human beings are capable of and how creative we are when it comes to massacres and torturing. What had a huge impact on my work is actually the film Waltzwood Bashir, who came out like before I started this film, and I really loved that film. And but it also made me decide to do a hybrid somehow, because I think the very strong scenes of Waltzwood Bashir are the scenes where you go into surrealism, where you see, for example, the protagonist swimming in the arms of, or laying in the arms of a huge woman. And then we have those, in my opinion, a bit less strong scenes where he puts the protagonist on a chair in an interview setting, but it's drawn. And I think there it becomes a bit mechanical somehow. So you lose some information that if you would have the protagonist talking to the camera directly, you would have more information through the face, through the expressions, through the gestures. Their animation comes to its limit. It's not the best tool to use it in that way, that's my opinion. I mean, for me as a filmmaker and really, I mean, a film lover, of course, cinema is very important. And I go very often myself, I go to cinemas. I love movies and I think it's a great way to explore stories.